Hey, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. You're listening to the longest running superhero role playing game on Earth. I'm your host, the Game Master, and today we're going to talk about Inspector Gadget, at least our version of it. So, I should probably start by saying I was a huge fan of the original Inspector Gadget cartoon when I was a little kid. I never missed an episode. Um, I had all the toys, which a lot of people don't even know there were toys. Um, they had these little figurines that were kind of like hard rubber or something like that, of all the main characters from the show. I had all of those. Um, I had the big Inspector Gadget action figure that had like telescoping limbs and a cloth trench coat, and it came with like a little propeller thing that you would like plug into the top of it. It was loaded with like features and accessories and stuff. It was an awesome toy. So so I've always been a fan of Inspector Gadget. And in the 90s, at one point, we were playing another system called GURP Supers. And one of the things I liked about the character sheets for GURPS was they had a large rectangular area kind of in the middle of the sheet where you could draw your character. And I've mentioned in some of my other videos that I'm an artist. That's my day job. I'm an art teacher now. And so at any rate, one day I had a blank character sheet, and um I would just draw, like, some people tap their foot or whatever like that. I would just draw, right, during class or something like that. At any rate, and this would be when I was in college, by the way. But at any rate, I drew a picture of Inspector Gadget, and I go really out of my way to try to not sound arrogant when I describe my artwork. Like, I'm really harsh when it comes to my own art. Like, I'm my own worst critic, right? Um, and I don't want to sound arrogant, so don't take this the wrong way, please. But this drawing was better than what I normally do, you know? If there's kind of a spectrum where sometimes just by a freak of nature or whatever, something turns out better than it normally does, right? That was this picture. It might be, I don't know, in like the top 3 or something, of the best drawings I've ever done in my whole life. And if I tried to draw it again right now, I there's no way I could do it again. But, but at any rate, so it turned out decent, all right? And something that was a thing at the time is I would have these big 3-ring binders full of character sheets. And my friends liked to flip through it. They wanted to see my drawings and stuff, and we would usually get together every weekend to play, and the binder would get passed around, and the practical reason for it was because they were looking for their own character. Because I held on to everybody's character sheets because they kept losing them otherwise. At any rate, though, but they enjoyed seeing some of the stuff in the book. And at any rate, I remember when I did the Inspector Gadget thing, it was a real attention getter, right? For multiple reasons. So one is it looked good. Again, that sounds arrogant. I don't know how else to describe it. I apologize. But at any rate, they liked it. And so then people were like, are we gonna play an Inspector Gadget role-playing game? Like, are you gonna run GURPS Inspector Gadget? Um, and they weren't, like, against it exactly. They were just weirded out by the concept, right? And I kept telling everybody the same thing, which is, like, I don't know, it kinda just started as a doodle. Um, I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing. And one friend of mine named Howard Warns, I think he was the first one that was like, "Do you know who Stiltman is?" And I was like, "No." And he's like, "He's kind of like Inspector Gadget, but he's like a Marvel character." And I was like, "Really?" And I looked him up, and he has the telescoping limbs, but kind of nothing else. And sort of one by one, people started kind of saying, so and so, I saw this one character and his eyes he's got like cyborg eyes that they look normal, but he can make them like extend out of his head. And then like the sides of his eyes are like the circuit pattern stuff. And that'd be kind of cool for like Inspector Gadget. And so I think the first thing was people kept, every week they're flipping through the thing and they're getting kind of like more and more desensitized to the idea. And everybody's kind of contributing. Like we're kind of like crowdsourcing this idea of like what would our Inspector Gadget be like? Because with the original cartoon, and I'm not trying to say anything bad about the original cartoon at all, right? I love the original cartoon, but it doesn't feel the same as like something you'd read in Marvel Comics. You know what I mean? Like you just can't imagine Inspector Gadget hanging out with a character like say Wolverine or Batman or whatever. It's because it's got a, like a cartoony thing going on. Where, for instance, Chief Quimby gives Inspector Gadget some kind of a little thing that tells him what his mission is, and then of course the famous bit is this message will self-destruct in 30 seconds or whatever. And if Chief Quimby is like popped up out of say a trash can like Oscar the Grouch to give it to Inspector Gadget. Inspector Gadget crumples it up, throws it in the trash can, slams the lid shut, walks away, and there's like an explosion in the trash can. But of course, it's not realistic. It's not like the same as if there was a Wolverine movie and he threw a grenade in a trash can and held the lid down while it went off and there was like a guy inside. You know what I mean? So, yeah, we had like, I mean, it was a years long discussion of like, what would that even look like? And something we used to do a lot back in the 90s, for better or worse, is we would say, start with insert franchise here that's usually kind of kid oriented and, so on and so forth. And then we would run it through the filter of what if it was a horror movie? And whatever comes out the other side, we'd be like, okay, well, what would that look like though? And then usually we could imagine that, which would be like sort of like an extreme version of what we were shooting for. And then we would dial it back. Right. So we kind of did that with Inspector Gadget. And I think right around that time, because I'm thinking maybe like 99, somewhere in that ballpark, the Inspector Gadget movie came out then with Matthew Broderick. And we saw that. Most people didn't like it. I did not love it, but I did not hate it. And a lot of my friends hated it. I felt like it was kind of hit and miss, and I saw it and I was like, well, there's some interesting stuff there, and it kind of gets lost in a lot of like the crappy parts. Um, but I was like, okay. Like there are for sure parts of that I would rip off, and there's parts of that I would not rip off. You know what I mean? And I don't know. We finally played an Inspector Gadget role-playing game, or I want to say around 2010. So we sort of used for episode one, we did a thing that was kind of like the Matthew Broderick movie, but we changed it. And so it was like we do, like it's set in Ohio, and I'm from Ohio, so I kind of always get a kick out of any chance I get to use Ohio in a story. Because it's kind of a relatability thing. It'd probably be its own video, but at any rate, so we set it in Ohio, in the same town they used in the movie. We start off with him as a security guard. We name him John Brown because I thought that's as good as anything. We give him the niece, Penny. We make her exactly like she is in the cartoon. She's a little girl with blonde hair and bangs and pigtails and a red shirt and green pants and a laptop computer that looks like um, a book. But then we basically have the dog be a normal dog. Brain. That was something we all kind of agreed that as far as we wanted to take Brain was like if you've ever seen Jim Carrey's movie The Mask, that first movie where there's like a dog in it, named Mila or something like that, that's just like crazy smart, right? That's about as much as we wanted to see Brain doing, was like if you're locked in a jail cell and you need him to bring you your keys, he can do that. Like that's as smart as we made him. Um, we didn't have stuff like Brain putting on a fake mustache and pretending to be a chef and preparing you lasagna. We thought that was kind of too much. Um, and then we used the love interest from the movie. We used the name of Dr. Claw from the movie, which was what was his name? Skolax, I think. Um, but we only use it long enough for him to lose his hand in a car accident, and then he needs a replacement. And so his first hand, the Mark One, so to speak, is like the crappy robot claw like he has in the movie, basically, right? It's just enough to come up with an excuse to call him Dr. Claw. And then as soon as we establish the name, because we get into the idea that he stole technology from a robotics firm, and that once he has that technology, why would you still have a stupid looking hand? Why would you not have a normal looking hand? So we get him to look like Dr. Claw as soon as we can. We make him sound like Dr. Claw. We make him just everything across the board, right? Same with Gadget. We didn't have him look like Matthew Broderick. We gave him kind of that Wolverine haircut, just toned down, a little shorter. Um, yeah, we dress him like Gadget. The Gadget Mobile, I hated the Gadget Mobile from the live action movie. We went with the one from the 80s where it's kind of like a red, white, and blue minivan, and then it can change, kind of like the Mask vehicles. See, I'm mentioning two versions of Mask now. I'm going to confuse somebody. Before I was talking about the Jim Carrey movie where he had a green face. Now I'm talking about the 80s toy line where everybody wore a helmet, which they called masks. But the sort of the one of the major things about the toy line is it was vehicles that could transform not into robots like the Transformers, but they would transform into different vehicles. So like the main bad guy had a plane that could transform into a helicopter, for instance. Um, that's basically what we did with the Gadget Mobiles. It's basically a minivan that can transform into a sports car. Um, but yeah, we pretty much ran a edited kind of reimagined version of the first movie for the first adventure, and then we ran adventures after that, and they were based on the episodes of the cartoon, and we set it when the cartoon came out. So if the first, if Inspector Gadget season 1 episode 1, if that aired in 1982, then we say, "Yep, in 1982 he's a cyborg, he's, doing the thing." And we decided that Penny was a genius savant, kind of a kid. I always forget the name of, someone's probably going to say in the comments section. Feel free to, by the way. Who is the composer of classical music? And like he was doing stuff when he was like a little kid. He was literally writing stuff when he was like 5 or 10 years old or whatever. I always forget because just I can never attach that to the name of a specific musician. But at any rate, um, we kind of said Penny was like that, but her thing was sort of like detective work, you know? And so then by doing that, we kind of say our version of Inspector Gadget, aka John Brown, is not, he's not dumb. Obviously they play it up for laughs on the show, and I get it. Again, I always feel like I'm crapping on the show. I'm not trying to do that. I'm just saying we took it in a more serious direction, and so our Gadget is still kinda doing that, but it's just really toned down, right? Um, he he's arriving at the wrong conclusion, but just not, um, cartoonishly so, you know what I mean? So, like, there's a bit where Mad was stealing like, basically, they were gonna build a laser. Classic comic book stuff. They're gonna build a laser, they're gonna steal all the stuff that they need to build the laser, and one of the things is a ruby. And so Inspector Gadget assumes that, well, they're gonna like sell the ruby for money, and then they're gonna, obviously they're gonna buy stuff with money. And so then Penny steps in and says, well, like whatever they're gonna buy with the money in your scenario, like why wouldn't they just steal that? She figures out that they're making a laser, but that was like a typical thing. His guess is not like a stupid guess. It's just not the right guess. That was sort of like where we landed on it. And when there was humor in the game, I would compare it to like say the humor you'd have in like a Spider-Man movie or a Spider-Man comic book or whatever, where like Spider-Man tells jokes and stuff, but it's not gonna like mess with your suspension of disbelief. Um, so we did the bit from the Broderick movie where it was Mad builds basically a copy of Inspector Gadget. I think that's in one of the cartoon episodes too, but I haven't seen the cartoon for a while now, so it's not fresh in my memory. But at any rate, we for sure did one um where he fights his counterpart and he literally takes the head off of the robot to win and throws the head in the river. But then in our version, the body doesn't just run away. Cartoonishly, the body just kind of flops over on the sidewalk there. So the good guys take it back to their headquarters and hang on to it. And then there was another cartoon later, like a CGI cartoon. And in that one, um, Dr. Claw basically mails Gadget a bomb, and we just treated that as a more serious version of what it is. So he opens like a brown cardboard box and like this bomb explodes. And in the cartoon, it was like you know what I mean, like the black spherical bomb with a big fuse that's slowly burning down. Our version was like more of like a remote controlled device, like you might see in a heist movie or something like that. But at any rate, opening the thing triggers the bomb, and in both cases, in the original source material and in our version, all that's left is Gadget's head. And I did that actually because we said then that Gadget from that point on is for sure a a full conversion cyborg, which is where the only thing left of the original guy now is the brain. He's got a metal skull. You could think of that like the Terminator, or you could think of it like Wolverine, but either way, we said Gadget had a metal skull and it has life support stuff, built into it. And so Gadget is basically going to withstand whatever you do to him then, pretty much. And then they actually put Gadget's head on that robot body that they kept. And then they put a fake synthetic material face over top of him, you know. And so then that way we could do Gadget stories over multiple years and he always looks like Inspector Gadget. It also I liked it because then you didn't like I was actually really worried about did, how would you have enough room inside of your body for all this stuff that he can do, right? And by giving him, saying below the neck, he's totally robot. Um, that gave us, I thought, some wiggle room for some of that. Um, Another thing that was a difference between what we did and what's in the cartoon is I never had anything come out of like his head. That was one of the big ones. Is we were like for sure he's got a brain in there. Um, we don't want like retractable helicopter blades. I know that's like one of the most famous things he does. We did just about all the other stuff, but we never did the things popping out of the hat, actually. What are some other ones we did? We did one where Penny was cloned. That one was awesome. That was also based on a cartoon where Mad creates a clone of Penny. Well, basically, so Dr. Claw has two nephews that show up in different episodes over the years. One is named William, and another one is named Talon. And I can't remember which one it was now, but one of his nephews, who's the same age as Penny and has a crush on Penny and stuff like that, he says basically Penny is the real threat. Um, and so they clone her. And then when you have an evil Penny, she's actually a massive problem. And like she puts Inspector Gadget into a trash compactor a la Star Wars that seems like it's going to kill him until the good Penny hacks the system and shuts it down. Um, what else did she do? She went to, that thing NASA has to train astronauts to deal with G forces, and it's like a big centrifuge thing. It's usually like two kind of like it's like a cockpit on an armature. There's like two of them facing in different directions. And so when it spins, both of those cockpits are both going forwards then, you know what I mean? She goes to one of those and like, they have it within the normal threshold of however many G's they're making this person experience. And she like just puts it on high in the cartoon. And so in the version we were in, we did that, but we were like, no, yeah, that's killing people. That's super bad. To like put human beings in a centrifuge, like what comes out the other side of that scenario? You know what I mean? Um, there was a bit where some people are basically trying to build a transformer. And so we had said transformers had been around long enough, the government had a hold of some of their technology and they were trying to reverse engineer them. And so some of the people there were trying to reverse engineer Transformers technology. And she goes in and messes with the robot so that it like kills its creators. Um, and then there was a okay, so then there was the second live action movie that had they made a female robot called G2. And then she was kind of supposed to be Inspector Gadget's replacement. And then they end up getting along by the end of the movie and they kind of hook up. We brought her in, and that was the beginning of the idea of like, we're probably not going to make cyborgs from here on out, but we are going to be making these robots. And so then there was a sequel to Inspector Gadget in the 90s called Gadget Boy and Heather. And it kind of sucked, to be honest. But at any rate, we acknowledged it though, where we said they build Gadget Boy. And we left the door open for the idea there. Like we were kind of ambiguous because we weren't sure how we wanted to handle certain things, but we left the door open for the idea that Gadget Boy is then the was built. He's like a little android who is supposed to be the son of Inspector Gadget and G2. Um, we weren't sure if we wanted to do it or not. And um and then there was another show called I think it was called Inspector Gadget and the Gadgetinis. And in that one, there's basically two more Gadget Boys that they build, but Inspector Gadget and Penny is not in the 90s show with Gadget Boy and Heather. Penny gets name dropped then in this show, which takes place, I want to say in the early 2000s or something. But the Gadgetinis are kind of taking the place of Penny and Brain. And they are for sure kind of like diminutive robot duplicates of Inspector Gadget. that follow him around and help him on cases and so on and so forth. And by then, I think he's no longer Inspector Gadget. He's been promoted to Lieutenant Gadget. But they had this villain that they fought named Spydra, and she's got 6 arms and 2 legs, of course, and she wears a purple mask that covers the whole face, kind of like Spider-Man or Deadpool or whatever, you know. And I hinted, we never came right out and said it, but I hinted that she was actually Penny's evil clone. Because by the time that show came out, so many years had gone by, Penny would be an adult by then. So Penny, it turns out, built the Gadgetinis. So it seems like, when she's in her 30s or whatever, she is now, instead of out in the field doing stuff, she's more kind of like research and development kind of stuff. Um, but yeah, I was really heavily hinting, but we never really said that Spydra was the bad Penny that had turned up later, pun intended. But yeah, we did a handful of gadget stuff, and not a ton, maybe 10 adventures total. And even then it's kind of split up over 40 years of playing the game. So yeah, we don't do it often. And the reason that I don't do it more often, I mean, I guess there's multiple reasons, but the big one that jumps out at me is the tone thing is just always a problem. So I'll be describing something, and for me, I'm imagining a live action movie, and then I'll describe something kind of horrific, like this robot kills its creator or something because mad agents, intervened. And there's always a player at the table that's like, "Oh my God, I can't believe somebody died in an Inspector Gadget cartoon." And then I have to go back to trying to explain the whole thing, and it's just so hard to do that, you know? Um, and I feel like if unless and not every player, obviously, but I feel like the majority of players I've had over the years, if they can't see some kind of video thing that is an example of what you're talking about, then they can't wrap their head around it. Because I did a similar thing with Scooby Doo. And ironically, really, in my opinion, it's the exact same treatment we gave Inspector Gadget. But the Scooby Doo thing landed because they have seen enough live action Scooby Doo stuff, and whether that's a movie or just kind of like artwork online or cosplay or whatever, they seem to be more willing to envision a serious take on Scooby Doo, where, Scooby can't talk, he's kind of just a dog. You know what I mean? And again, I would make him as smart as, like, say, the dog from The Mask, but not a talking dog in the Hanna-Barbera sense, right? Um, so yeah, like that went over well, and we've ran a bunch of that. But because the Inspector Gadget stuff is always just like extra work, that's kind of kept me from doing more of it. Um, but I like it, you know. I think it's kind of cool. I would, like I said before, I would kind of like to see, because like Transformers, for instance, jumps out at me, where you got the live action movies, and then you've got the various cartoons, from over the years. And then on the more kiddie end of the spectrum, I guess probably Rescue Bots, which is the version for preschoolers, there's that. Um, I kind of wish they would do something along those lines with Inspector Gadget, where we would see, a spectrum of kind of gadget stuff ranging from silly to serious. Um, but I mean, that's just me. What about you? Let me know in the comments section. Did you like the Inspector Gadget cartoon? Uh, did you own any of the toys or anything like that? Um, would you ever play in an Inspector Gadget role-playing game? Um, or have you? That'd be interesting to see if anyone else has done it. Because I kind of feel like I might be the only person on the planet to ever even look at Inspector Gadget and go, man, this really needs a role-playing game. That's okay though. I don't mind being the only one. But at any rate, yeah, leave us a comment, and do the stuff, right? Hit like, hit subscribe, all that jazz. And from all of us here, we hope you have a good one, and we'll catch you next time.